Hey, it's Brad here. Thought I'd make a first video about my vinyl finds. I went shopping last week in Manchester, which is about 55 miles away from where I live, to a shop called King B Records, which is one of my favourite shops. And there are always good prices there, and they always have a really good selection. Not a huge shop, but lots of things that I would want to buy, so great place to go. Hope you're all okay. Let's get on with it. Before I start, I just want to say a massive thanks to all my subscribers. As you know, I'm fairly new to this. I'm very grateful for all the people that have subscribed, and obviously all the people that are watching, so cheers. Okay, so the first album, seeing as it's Manchester, we'll start off with a Manchester group, and I've elected to start with Happy Mondays. And this is their album Pills, Thrills and Bellyaches, which I have to admit is probably one of my favourite albums of all time, and my favourite sort of Manchester baggy record. And this is quite exciting for me to find this one, because I do have an original version of this, but this is the version that got withdrawn because of the candy wrappers that are on the front of the sleeve here. They didn't have permission to use them, so they had to withdraw the sleeve, and they brought a new one out after that. And this is from 1990, this album, if you don't know it, and also on the labels you can also see as well that it's got the wrappers from the sweets on it as well. And they brought out another version that had all the wrappers taken off because they were infringing copyright, and it looked a bit like this, so not quite as exciting really. And labels again were similar to this, as opposed to the ones that were on there. And I don't know if you know Happy Mondays or not, if you're from outside the UK, but they were sort of well known for Step On, which is on this album, and Kinky Afro, but it's a great Manchester baggy style album. Really love it, and I was really happy to get this withdrawn cover. That's quite hard to come by, quite rare. Okay, so secondly, this is another one that really excited me. This is the Butterfield Blues Band and East West. This is original American United States pressing with a gold Electra label. And as you'll see, stereo on both sides. Hope you can see that okay. There and there, so this is an original US pressing. And, you know, American records, plenty of them around in the UK, but sort of landmark albums like this one that I really like and that I really wanted, it's quite nice to get a US pressing. And this was their second album. And if you don't know about the group, they were formed in Chicago in 1963. I think two of the members of the band, Paul Butterfield and Elvin, I think met in college in Chicago, if I'm right. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And this album sort of contains a lot of blues standards. There's Muddy Waters track on here, Two Trains Running, Walking Blues, which was Robert Johnson. And there's also a Mike Nesmith song on here as well called Mary Mary. Mike Nesmith, who went on to be in the Monkees, he wrote that one, but it's uncredited on earlier versions of this album. But you can guess from the band name if you don't know about them, blues all the way. And he was a heck of a harmonica player, Paul Butterfield. Next we've got Soft Machine, and this is their debut album, 1969 I think for this one. And this is a US pressing as well. And I think there's a few different sleeves for this one. There was like a clock sleeve that you could sort of move around a little bit like Led Zeppelin 3 I suppose, and there was also a sleeve with just a band on the front, and this is just a quite plain boring one. This was like the third US pressing. It came out in 1969. And it's also a little bit different because I think there were some gatefold versions of it as well. And the lady here, you can see her bottom on the original one as well, but she was covered up for this one. So Soft Machine, you know, it's psych, a bit proggy, a bit jazzy influenced, and I've made reference to a couple of people in the band before. Yeah, nice to get the first album, which I've never had before, and that's one of those albums I've always wanted. It sort of just came into my head the day. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but sometimes you'll go to a record shop and you'll be thinking about a specific album or a specific group when you're on the way there, or in the days leading up to you going to the shop, and lo and behold, the album will turn up, or an album by them will turn up that you didn't have. Happens to me quite a bit, I would say. Okay, so next up we've got a UK band called The Vapors, And this album called Nuclear Days, which was like a play on the word nuclear. This album came out in 1980, and this is the first UK pressing of this one. And they were a power pop group from, I think, Guildford in Surrey, on United Artists Records here. They were formed in the late 70s. And they were managed by Bruce Foxton of The Jam and Paul Weller's dad. Paul Weller obviously from The Jam as well. John Weller. And they supported The Jam in 1979 on their Setting Suns tour. They had a massive hit in the UK with a song called Turning Japanese, and there's also a single on here called News at 10. But yeah, so an album I always wanted when I was a kid, but I never got around to buying it. Saw it in the shop, couldn't go wrong for £6. Bought it. Next up, we're back to the 60s here for Dave, Dee, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch. And this is their fourth album, called If No One Sang. And this came out in 1968. You can see there, great 60s style sleeve there. Sort of sums up the 60s almost, doesn't it really? And they were from southwest England, a county called Wiltshire. And they never, I don't think they ever really made it big in the USA. They were massive here in the UK. They had a couple of number ones. And they're both on this album, Legend of Xanadu and Saddleback. The lead singer was Dave Dee, and he used to be a policeman. And he was, in 1960, he was at the scene of when Eddie Cochran died in his fatal car accident in Wiltshire in the UK. And he was one of the police who was actually on the scene at the time. So, slightly unfortunate circumstances there, but yeah. So that's a little bit about them. And I know when they went to make their first album in 1964, they were sent to Joe Meek. I don't know if you know about Joe Meek. He was sort of an infamous producer in the early 60s and late 50s in the UK. And he was really out there on his own for being innovative the way he recorded things. And he actually asked them to record the first album at half speed, so he could add sound effects to it afterwards and speed it up himself. And he was famous for sort of doing these really strange recording methods and getting people to drop things into toilets for sound effects and all sorts of stuff. And he used to record things in his own house. And poor Joe, he was quite a character, and he produced a lot of groups in the early 60s, worked with lots of really top artists in the 60s. He came to a bit of a nasty end, unfortunately, but he was an amazing character out there on his own and very innovative. And he produced Telstar, and very instrumental in the way that actually came together and the way it sounded. Okay, so next up is Tom Rush. I don't know if he's particularly cool or anything, but I really like Tom Rush, what I know by him. And this is his 1964 album called Blues Songs Ballads. And this is original UK pressing. And if you don't know Tom Rush, he was a singer-songwriter, one of the first really in that genre. And never massive in the UK, but I understand he was quite big in the United States. This is on Extra. And yeah, this is his third album. And he was a guy from New Hampshire, I understand. And I also picked up another Tom Rush album while I was there, because like I said, you don't find too many Tom Rush albums out here in the UK, and this one's in beautiful conditions. Really happy with this one. This one's from 1968. And this one's got No Regrets on it. Yep, that No Regrets, and Tom Rush wrote that one, if people out there didn't realise, and went on to be a massive hit for numerous people. And on this album also there's collaborations, or songs written by, I should say, Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and Jackson Browne. But like I said, No Regrets he wrote on his own. Okay. Next up, this is a compilation. Best of Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. He was big in England and the UK through the 60s. Shaking All Over was one that he wrote. And that got to number one in 1960 in the UK, and Please Don't Touch, which was later covered by Motorhead and Girls' School, also reached number one in the UK. And he worked with Joe Moretti, who was a fantastic guitarist. And he was also very influential on select performance acts, I suppose, who later came along. Similar at the time to people like Screaming Lord Sutch, and then in the early 70s, big influence on people like Alice Cooper, Adam Ant. He knew how to rock and roll, did Johnny Kidd. And yeah, so greatest hits. I don't think he actually made any studio albums, but this is a great compilation with about 20 songs on it, and it came out in 1977. Okay, so this is really interesting. When I saw this one from a distance, I thought, wow, what psych album's this that I've never seen before? You know, what prog album is this? Because I've never seen. I mean, I don't know if this is a common record on a common sleeve, but it's not one I've seen before. And then when I looked up close, you can see here, it says it's the Ventures, and it's their first album, Walk Don't Run, and this is a 1969 repress on Liberty. And obviously the original sleeve was very different, because I think the original sleeve had like a model on the front and 4 guys who they'd got in the studio on the day, because I think the Ventures were on tour at the time when the first sleeve was about to be put together, so they couldn't be on the photograph for the actual album. And so this is, like I said, this is a Blue Liberty pressing from 1969. And yeah, I know the Ventures, surf pop, not very exciting, not very cool, but they produced a million albums, didn't they, in the 60s. And I was just taken in by the sleeve because I've never seen the sleeve before. Quite unusual. And while I was there, I also picked up the Ventures Let's Go, which is from 1963. And that's got Owatusi on it. And so that's more sort of like a sleeve you expect from the Ventures, really, isn't it? And I also picked up Where the Action Is, and this is from 1965, original Liberty mono recording as well. Okay, and finally, I got Quicksilver Messenger Service, and you all know this one, so I don't need to say too much about this one. This is an Edsel reissue. Their stuff's not that easy to get hold of in the UK at reasonable prices, and I think this is, if it's Edsel, it's probably from the mid-80s, 86 I think, probably this one. And it comes with a nice inner, with some band information on it. Nice photograph of the band as well. And there's the Edsel label. Produced a lot of repressed records in the mid-80s in the UK, and usually pretty good quality pressings as well, so they're worth getting hold of if you can't find or can't afford the originals of records. I know you see Quicksilver Messenger Service and this album, their first album in the VC all the time. They formed, I think, San Francisco in 1965, and best known for their song Fresh Air probably, but it's good to get hold of this one. I've got more finds, but I'll split that into a second video because I don't want this video to drag on for too long. Again, thanks very much for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon for the next video. Cheers.